Well guys, we are officially almost at the end of 2024. I just want to say guys, hopefully you guys had a great Christmas with your family and loved ones, and now 2025 is right around the corner, so it's time for the thing I love to do every single year on this channel, my end of the year list for 2024. And let's start off with the positive note. Let's talk about my favorite movies that came out in 2024. Now, I am doing the exact same thing that I did in 2022, where I now have, instead of 10, I'm naming off 15, because there's so many great movies that came out this year, I just couldn't nail it down to 10. I think this is a pretty solid year for movies. There's so many great movies that I loved this year, and there are some memorable stinkers of the year, but of course, we're going to start off talking about the positives first. Now, this is my subjective list. If there are movies that you do not like on this list, if you want to do something about it, comment down below. What are your favorite movies of 2024? Either top 15, top 10, any way you want it. And also, just a thing, I have not seen every single movie that came out 2024. Unfortunately, movies like Nosferatu, The Brutalist, A Complete Unknown are unfortunately coming out next year. Frickin' Australia release dates. Why'd they have to do this to me? Seriously. I wish there's very early screens before this release date so I can see those movies, and those movies could end up possibly on this list, but unfortunately I haven't seen them. But the movies I have seen, these are my favorites of the year. So before we start off my top 15 best movies of 2024, I have some honorable mentions to lay out. These are the movies that I still love in 2024, but they just didn't make it on the list. Starting with Civil War, Ordinary Angels, Love Lies Bleeding, The Fall Guy, Turtles All the Way Down, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, My Old Ass, Alien Romulus, Saturday Night, A Real Pain, Drawer Number 2, and a movie that's really close to my top 15 and really hurts for me to say, Deadpool and Wolverine. I love each and every one of these honorable mentions, but unfortunately, they do not end up on this top 15 list. So no further ado guys, this is going to be a bit of a long video because I'm talking about 15 movies that I love this year. Let's get straight to it. Starting off with my number 15 is Hitman. Now, I love Richard Linklater. I think he's one of my favorite directors. I love Dazed and Confused. I especially love School of Rock. And his return to form with movie making with Hitman really hits the spot. I enjoyed this movie. This is a really unique black comedy slash romance film, and I thought this is one of Glenn Powell's best performances I've ever seen. It's a really good twist on a hitman story about a teacher that pretends to be a hitman, and I think that concept really plays along with it. Unexpected twists and turns. There are some good intense moments, but there's also some really sweet black comedy romance moments that I feel like it really nails the film to the table. Richard Linklater, you definitely done it again with Hitman. Coming into my number 14 is Challenges. I love Luca Guadagnino. I think he's a really good director. I love his film that came out last year, Bones and All, and he did it again with Challenges, which I would say is one of his best in a while. Zendaya, this is definitely one of her better performances that I have seen her in. Josh O'Connell, great breakthrough performance. I really want to see him in more movies, and especially Mike Feist. Man, I loved him in this movie. This is definitely one of his best performances out of West Side Story. This is a movie that made love triangles right, you know? Caring about each and every couple, understanding their motivations, while also feeling the intense of sports of tennis with some of the most intense tennis scenes that I've ever seen in a movie. It is well directed, and the chemistry between the three stars really what made this movie really worth watching, and I'm curious to see what Luca Guadagnino does with the American Psycho remake coming out. Coming into my number 13 is The Substance. Now, this is one of those horror films that it's one of those films that I wasn't sure of putting on this list because I liked the movie, but I wasn't sure of watching the movie again, and then I suddenly watched the movie again, and I loved it even more. It's one of those movies that pays a really good homage to buddy horror films. This is one of the most disgusting filled buddy horror films I've ever seen, but I feel like that's what this movie's trying to attempt. This is definitely one of the most intense horror films that I have seen this year. Demi Moore, one of her better performances that I've seen in a while. Margot Qualley, this is a year for her. She's been in a lot of mixed bag movies, but definitely this is the best performance that I've ever seen her in. Dennis Quaid looks like he had a total blast being in this movie. This movie's intense. There are so many unexpected twists and turns in this movie. The plot of the movie is one of the most original plots that I've seen this year that turns out really freaking well. It's one of those plots that you enjoy watching despite how gross and disgusting this movie is. But like I said, this is a pay homage to buddy horror films out there, and I thought The Substance really handles it well, but definitely this is not a movie for everybody. Coming into my number 12 is Inside Out 2. This is definitely one of my favorite anime films of the year. I have another anime film that's higher on my list, but I still haven't forgotten Inside Out 2. It's definitely one of the better Pixar films that came out in the world, because I would say Pixar films haven't been the best, even though I like some of them. Inside Out 2 brings Pixar back. It ups the stakes more than the first Inside Out, which is what a sequel should do, with the original characters still being fantastic in the film, and Maya Hawke's Anxiety, one of the most memorable supporting characters that I have seen in anime films in a very long time. Like I said, this film ups the stakes a lot more with Riley's puberty that is written and directed very freaking well. It shows that Pixar has still got its mojo from its original writing and concepts, because Inside Out 2 is definitely one of the better Pixar sequels that I've seen since Toy Story 3. Coming into my number 11 is Late Night with the Devil. Now, I don't know if people are still talking about this movie anymore, because this movie deserves much more credit than it deserves. This is definitely one of the most unique horror films that I have seen this year. David Dastmalchian does one of his best performances that I have seen him in. It takes basically something out of the Twilight Zone. It's a movie about an actual broadcast of a late show going wrong, with the host bringing a possessed girl and everything goes into shit. With some of the best editing that I have ever seen in a horror film, the way the movie looks, it looks convincing that it's actually a taping of an old classic late night show. And the directors are actually from Melbourne, and they direct this movie better than I would say most horror films that I've seen in previous years. Definitely Late Night with the Devil is one of the most underrated movies that I have seen in 2024. This movie still blows my mind, still to this day. Now, let's get into my actual top 10 favorite movies of 2024. Coming into my number 10 is Kill. This is definitely one of my favorite action films of this year. Now, I went into this film blind, not knowing anything about this movie, except this movie's getting some great reviews, and this is one of the best blind experiences that I've ever had. This movie blew my mind. The action scenes are unbelievably gory in the film that I absolutely loved it, and it's one of those movies that goes in ways that you do not expect it. This is a romance film, this is an action thriller film. It's a film that started off thinking, yeah, okay, this is a film that we kind of not expecting to see, and then when the film shifts and changes, the more times it does, the film just gets better and better and better. Some of the action scenes, I would say, some of the most memorable I've seen in action films in a long time, and the main lead of the film, he needs to be in more action films like this because he completely nails it. Picture Die Hard meets Train to Busan without zombies. That's how I'll picture Kill. Speaking of blind watches, coming into my number 9 is Strange Darling. Same thing with Kill. I went into this movie not knowing anything except great reviews this movie has presented. And it shows when you see movies blind, it basically makes the movie much more better than it is. This is a really good twist on the slasher movie genre. The two main leads are fantastic in the film. The main chick in the film, I can't picture her name right now. She deserves more credit than she deserves. She is phenomenal in this film. This film is twisted. This is one of the best directed slasher films that I have seen with the 35mm print. It really works for this film. It adds a bit of a classic feel to it. One of the best films that's telling from perspective of chronological order, which I do not like. I don't like when films mix up different times in order, but this movie actually nails that really freaking well. Coming into my number 8 is Furiosa, a Mad Max saga. I don't understand why this movie bombed. Yes, it's not Mad Max Fury Road. It's not as good as that movie, but I feel like that's the point. You cannot top Mad Max Fury Road. I would say Furiosa Mad Max Saga is a great character study with one of the better performances by Anya Taylor-Joy. She is phenomenal in this movie. She doesn't speak much dialogue in the film, so most of her actions felt very believable in this film, and Chris Hemsworth is a fun-ass villain. George Miller has done it again with the cinematography and the scope of this movie. The action scenes are fantastic in the film, but I would say the character study with Furiosa is actually really well written in my opinion, and it takes its time with it, and I was enjoying every minute of it. Like I said, it's not as good as Mad Max Fury Road, but honestly, it's not Mad Max Fury Road. It's a different movie here. It's not an action car chase film from start to finish, which, by the way, I love Mad Max Fury Road. It's still my favorite in the Mad Max series, but Furiosa Mad Max Saga is a great character study of how Furiosa became the way she is, and I thought from start to finish, I was into it. Coming to my number 7 is Better Man, a movie that I was not expecting to put this on my list, honestly, because I saw the trailer and I'm like, I'm not sure what I'm going to think. And then I saw an early screening of this film, and this is probably one of the better music biopics that I have seen in a long time. Taking from perspective of Robbie Williams as a CGI ape is a silly concept, but in some way, it actually works in this film. Because throughout the film, you don't even notice you're seeing an ape. You're seeing Robbie Williams in his biopic, telling his story about his drug addiction and his suicidal themes, while also being one of the most popular British pop stars in the world. And the way this movie is written with some really fantastic musical sequences, I gotta say, Michael Gracie does a great job directing this movie. This is definitely a huge improvement in my opinion of The Greatest Showman. It shows that Michael Gracey knows how to direct musical sequences right, while also making a very stunning looking movie. It's easily one of those films that I feel like that's what music biopics should have been. Coming to my number 6 is Superman, the Christopher Reeve story. This is one of the most tear-jerking movies that I have seen this year. Normally I don't watch documentaries, but this is from the perspective of a guy that grown up with the Christopher Reeve Superman movies, and not knowing much about Christopher Reeve besides the horse riding accident. And man, this film, oh my god, I was literally in tears walking out of this film. This is a beautiful documentary that's really well edited, seeing the life of Christopher Reeve come to life in this documentary, and it makes you appreciate Christopher Reeve for what he has done even more. Taken from a perspective of his kids, his ex-wife, and some of the friends that I do not know Christopher Reeve is friends with, like Robin Williams, for example. It really shows off how important Christopher Reeve is to the world, not just as Superman, but him as a person, and I thought this documentary really handles that very, very well. Okay, now we're into my top 5. These are the 5 movies that I will absolutely, in my opinion, remember 2024 with. Coming to my number 5 is definitely the best animated film of the year, and that is easily The Wild Robot. Now, this is tied with Transformers 1 and The Wild Robot because I love both of those movies so much, but I could not stop thinking of The Wild Robot, so that is my favorite animated film of this year, and probably one of the better DreamWorks movies that I've seen in a very long time. If you love movies like WALL-E or The Iron Giant, this is basically a love letter to that. The story is really well done, the voice acting is fantastic, the animation looks absolutely stunning, but this is a good motherhood story in an unexpected way, and I thought it's well freaking directed and really well written. I remember seeing the trailer for this film, and I'm like, I do not know what to think. And when I saw this movie in IMAX 3D, my mind completely exploded. This is an animated film that I'm pretty sure it is going to win Best Animated Film in the Oscars. It's definitely going to be Inside Out 2, which I was really surprised. DreamWorks is basically going to beat Pixar this year. That's for sure, because The Wild Robot is definitely very praised, and it's praised for a reason, because this is definitely my favorite animated film of this year. Coming to my number 4 is absolutely my favorite horror film of this year, and that is Longlegs. Man, talking about a movie that is so freaking engaging from start to finish. Michael Monroe does a great job in the film, but I would say Nicolas Cage, this is one of his best performances that I've ever seen him in. Yes, it's a meme movie, but it's a good, fantastic meme movie. If there's a lot of memes of this movie, it makes me remember how good Longlegs is. This is a very intense film from start to finish. I was on the edge of my seat the entire freaking time. The director does a great job directing this movie. I'm looking forward to The Monkey coming out next year. It's a movie that had so many memorable moments, but memorable moments that you feel very uncomfortable with, and this movie goes in ways that I was not expecting. And that's what films I want. I want films to go in ways that I do not expect, while also enjoying it at the same time, and I would say Longlegs absolutely did that for me. Coming into my number 3 is Nora. Now, Mikey Madison. This is an actress that I have in mind that should get nominated for Best Actress, because this is her movie. She absolutely stole the show in this movie. This is a very unique, fucked up Cinderella story that does everything great to the table. It's a fun black comedy. It's an excellent thriller as well. Speaking of movies that goes in ways you do not expect, Nora definitely goes into that way, and it's probably one of the most memorable theater experiences that I had this year. The whole audience was killing themselves laughing, sighing the whole way through. It's definitely an experience, especially if you have not seen any of the trailers. Do not watch this movie blind, because Nora will go in places they do not expect it. Everyone does a great job in the movie, but Mikey Madison needs to get nominated for Best Actress. This is definitely one of the most memorable actresses that I have seen this year. I'll definitely remember Mikey Madison for that, especially for Nora. Now, 2 and 1. This is one of the hardest 2 and 1s that I've ever done, because I love both of these 2 movies so much, but of course I have to separate them somehow, so which one outweighs the other? Coming to my number 2 is Dune Part 2. Denis Villeneuve, you have done it again. This is one of the better sequels that I would say in a very long time. This is one of those movies that is an experience. It's an IMAX experience that has a really good story throughout it. It tops the first one, which I think a sequel should do. Ups the stakes for characters, has one of the best villains of the year. Austin Butler absolutely crushes it in this movie. Every single cast member is great. Zendaya once again be on the list, but Timothée Chalamet, man, this is one of the best performances that I've ever seen him. And the action scenes are incredible. Every single moment of Dune Part 2, I was on the edge of my seat the entire time. The score is still good, but Denis Villeneuve, man, he has never disappointed me. He's like the next Christopher Nolan. He has never disappointed me. Each of his movies just gets better and better and better. And it's one of those movies that ended off in a way where I'm like, I wanted more. I literally wanted more out of. I cannot wait for Dune Messiah because honestly, this movie, I just don't want to wait. I just don't want to wait for the film because I want to explore this world a lot more. And that is thanks to Dune Part 2 right here. Alright, now we're into my number 1. This is my favorite movie of 2024. You might have guessed it already because you're thinking, where is this movie on the list? Or your honorable mentions. It's in my number 1. This is the movie that made me cry the most, made me laugh the most, made me just feel like, yes, this is a movie that I'm absolutely going to remember in 2024. If you have not guessed it already, of course, my number 1 goes to Wicked. Man, this is how you do a movie right here. John M. Chu, congratulations, you ended up in my favorite movie of 2024. Wicked is exactly what I wanted to be. Coming from the guy who's a fan of the Broadway musical, fan of this cast, and absolutely this movie nails everything to the barrel. The musical sequences are just phenomenal to watch. It literally felt like cinema. Ariana Grande and Cynthia Erivo, one of the most memorable castings that I have seen this year. They both nailed it as Glinda and Elphaba, especially Ariana Grande as Glinda, but of course Cynthia Erivo is phenomenal in this film. The rest of the characters are great, but absolutely this movie, it spans the musical, but also sticks with it really freaking well. It's literally one of the better musicals that I have seen in a long time, and this is a movie that I have seen literally more times than I did. That's how much I loved Wicked so much. It's going to be one of those musicals that I'm going to absolutely remember for the rest of my life, and it ends in a way where it's so conclusively that I can wait for Wicked for good. I can literally wait because this just feels like its own movie right there. It's a really good character study movie that like pays so much great homage to the classic Wizard of Oz right here, while also being its own movie right here. And seriously guys, this movie has one of the most memorable endings of the entire year. Defying Gravity. I will absolutely remember this scene throughout the rest of this year and many years to come. I literally walked out of Wicked smiling and also in tears. If that came out of it, that is how you should do your number 1 movie of the best movies of 2024. Loved all of these movies that I picked out in my top 15, but Wicked is absolutely a movie that I'm absolutely going to remember and makes me more excited for Wicked for Good coming out next year. So Wicked, or Wicked Part 1, however you want to call it, is my favorite movie of 2024. So guys, that is it. Those are my top 15 favorite movies of 2024. I cannot wait to do the rest of the end of year list, guys. My worst is coming next, so look forward to that because that one's going to be a fun list. But let me know in the comments below, what are your favorite movies of 2024? Either top 10, top 15, top 20, however you want it. Let me know in the comments below. Make sure you guys follow me on social media links down below. Keep contact with me and make sure you guys subscribe to my channel notified for my latest movie reviews and other movie related content. Thank you guys so much for watching and have a nice day.